It is August 2024, just a little over 12 months after Nigeria sworn in its new president. And the people have had enough. Fuel prices have doubled, food is unaffordable, and ordinary people, market traders, street hawkers, even beggars are being crushed by government policies they had no say in. The protests last 10 days, then security forces move in, the crowds thin, people go home, nothing changes. It felt like a uniquely modern failure. But Nigeria has been here before, not roughly, exactly here. An unjust tax, mass protests, a government that waited it out. The year was 1947, and that time, the women won. To understand what happened in Abeokuta in 1947, you need to understand one thing. Yoruba market women were not a footnote to the economy, they were the economy. For centuries, women in Egba society controlled the markets. They set prices. They managed trade networks that stretched across towns and across borders. They fed families, funded households, and kept commerce moving while colonial administration sat in its offices writing reports. These were not women on the margins. They had power, economic power, social power, and in many cases, more information about how money actually moved in that society than any British district officer ever would. And at the center of this world was one woman who understood both sides of the divide. Educated in England, a school teacher, respectable by every colonial standard, she had started out organizing women's literacy classes, polite, proper, unthreatening. But the more time she spent with the market women, the more she understood something the British had fatally miscalculated. These women had nothing left to lose, and a woman with nothing left to lose, who also knows how to organize. That is not a protester. That is a revolution waiting for a date. In 1947, the colonial administration decided that women needed to be formally taxed. Now, the women were already paying informal levies, tolls on goods, market fees, the quiet, grinding extraction that colonialism specialized in. But this was different. This was official, documented, expanded, and it landed on women who were already stretched to nothing. Remember, this is post-war Nigeria. The Second World War had drained resources, spiked prices, and squeezed the informal economy hardest. The women selling in those markets had absorbed years of economic punishment quietly, and now the government wanted more, on paper, with receipts. But there was something else, something that made it personal. The tax wasn't just about money, it was being administered under the authority of the traditional ruler, who the woman believed was actively collaborating with the British against his own people. It wasn't just a tax, it was a betrayal. She didn't start with a riot, she started with a meeting. She brought the market women together under her women's union and did something deceptively simple. She listened. She let women who had never been in a formal organization speak their grievances out loud in their local language, not English. No minutes, no colonial decorum, just fury, finally given a room. Then she organized it. Petitions were written and ignored. Delegations were sent and dismissed. The British administration did what colonial administrations always do with inconvenient complaints. They delayed, deflected, and waited for the noise to die down. It did not die down. The protests escalated. Thousands of women began gathering outside the king's palace, night after night, singing, not gentle songs, protest songs, sharp, satirical, humiliating verses directed at the king personally, composed collectively by the women themselves. In her culture, being publicly shamed in song is not a small thing. It is a weapon. The colonial administration was baffled, the king was rattled, and the women kept coming. At its peak, an estimated 10,000 women were involved. 10,000. no Twitter, no WhatsApp, no hashtag, just organization, word of mouth, market to market, town to town. And it worked. In 1949, under sustained and relentless pressure, the king abdicated, not arrested, not removed by British force, pressured out by women with songs and solidarity. One of the most powerful traditional rulers was gone, just because 10,000 women refused to go home. The tax was scrapped. Let that land for a second. A colonial administration, one of the most powerful imperial systems in human history, reversed its policy. Because market women organized, sustained pressure over 2 years, and did not blink. She didn't stop there. She went on to become one of the most prominent anti-colonial activists in all of Africa. She met Mao Zedong. She was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The Soviet Union gave her the Lenin Peace Prize. And when she died in 1978, thrown from a window during a military raid on her son's compound, Nigeria lost one of the most consequential women it ever produced. But the victory of 1947 was already written into history, permanent, undeniable, won by women the colonial administration never took seriously. So why did 1947 win and 2024 go home empty-handed? It is tempting to say the tools were better then, but that makes no sense. The women had no tools, no phones, no internet, no international press watching in real time. What they had was something harder to build and easier to lose: specific demands, sustained pressure, and community. The 1947 revolt had one clear target: this tax, this administrator, this betrayal. Every woman in that market knew exactly what they were fighting for and exactly what winning looked like. The 2024 protests were righteous. The anger was real and justified, but the demands were broad. The organization was loose, and when the government announced a minimum wage increase, just enough, just in time, the momentum fractured. The women could not be bought off with a gesture because they weren't a hashtag. They were a community with a shared wound. Here is the uncomfortable truth that history is offering Nigeria right now. Protest alone has never been enough. It has always been organized protest, targeted protest, relentless protest. The women of 1947 didn't just take to the streets. They took to the streets every night for 2 years. Nigeria keeps asking why nothing changes, but maybe the better question is, are we willing to do what it actually takes?